Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well out there. All right, quick reminder for you guys to join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get a great inside scoop on all things BYU sports that I'm hearing, but more importantly, support the podcast as well. Just $5 a month to be a part of the group, and the best part is the updates come to you in the form of a text message. You can fire back with thoughts of your own via text, and we have one-on-one conversations. It's a great way to be a part of the community, and the best part is you get a 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you right out the gate before you're charged anything. So join us today. The hyperlink in the show notes below to join us on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right. BYU basketball got a monster win over Kansas. As dominant a win as I can remember in recent memory for BYU basketball. They absolutely thrashed Kansas, but there's no rest for the weary. And BYU's right back to the grindstone, working and trying to get better as a basketball program. But they have a huge opportunity staring them in the face as they head to Arizona. Now, the Arizona Wildcats are going to prove to be a formidable test for BYU because the Cougars already lost Arizona at home. Remember, they lost and then they lost Arizona and they lost to Cincinnati. And it felt like this team was on shaky ground at that point. Well, how did they respond? Well, all they've done is won 3 straight games, beating West Virginia in West Virginia, taking down Kansas State, and as I mentioned, just absolutely demolishing the Kansas Jayhawks. BYU is sitting on a really strong position right now, and they should be feeling very strong because right now, as of recording on this podcast, BYU is 5th in the Big 12 all alone. There are 3 teams behind them. Kansas, who they just beat, is at 8-7. Baylor 8-7, and TCU, who continues to fight, scratch, and claw, they're at 8-7. There are 2 teams at 7-8, a couple spots back in Utah and Kansas State, and West Virginia is sitting at 6-8 as well. So they're all kind of bunched up there. But BYU knows right now they've got the inside track at the 5th seed when it comes to the Big 12 tournament. That's a great spot to be because that gets you that bye that everybody wants, and it gets you the essentially the lowest seed of the preceding round facing you in Kansas City. That win against Kansas, yes, it was a statement to the rest of the Big 12. The BYU is coming into their own. There's no doubt about that. That was a major win for BYU to have that on their resume, and it will prove to be one that'll help BYU in coming days and weeks. But the nice part is now they've got the inside track at that 5th spot, and they can essentially seal it up if they were able to take down both Arizona schools this week. Now, pulling off another top 25 upset in the same week as you beat Kansas, that might be a bridge too far, especially going to the McKell Center down there in Tucson, which is really tough to win in. But can we put anything past BYU right now in basketball? They've got everything to play for. They've got everything in front of them. If they were to sweep this Arizona road trip, we're not talking anymore about BYU being on the bubble. And I think that's probably already passed with that Kansas win. I'm sure the latest bracketology may be out by the time you see this. And I'm expecting BYU to be very much off the bubble at this point. But if you were to beat the Arizona schools, then we're talking about how high of a seed could BYU achieve? Could they surpass last year when they were a 6th seed? That's the type of conversation that could come out of this weekend at Arizona. Now, could the flip side happen? Could they fall flat on their face, be feeling good about themselves, reading all their press clippings and fall flat on their face? Yeah, that also could happen. You could go get beat at Arizona, and then Arizona State, who is absolutely reeling right now, could get you as well as you head into Tempe. BYU, Kevin Young, they have to make sure that the guys that they are on the same page. And it sure feels like they are right now because there's contributions coming from across the roster. Trey Stewart's been absolutely masterful since kind of re-entering the lineup and essentially playing the most minutes he's played since his freshman campaign. It feels like Trey Stewart is having a career renaissance of sorts. And I'm not saying that he's going to become this starter for BYU. It's not his role right now for BYU, but him being an impact sub, that's a great thing. An impact guy off the bench. Mihailo Bošković, same thing. Those two were instrumental in BYU kind of resurrecting themselves against West Virginia. And since then, they've really proven to be key cogs. The depth and breadth of BYU's rotation right now, it is giving Kevin Young every option under the sun to counter every team the way that he feels like BYU best needs to play them. They need to play a 5-out lineup. They can do that with Bošković. If they need to play a 2-man big lineup, they have proven that they can run that at times as well. Doesn't matter what BYU has to do to counter these opponents, they've got options for them. And that's a big benefit to Kevin Young as he tries to find the right combination of guys. Is it going to be perfect every game? No. And it's never going to be perfect. That's pie in the sky type stuff. But the way the BYU went about just thoroughly running over Kansas, essentially the Jayhawks waved the white flag with what, 10 minutes to go, it felt like. I would say at the end of the first half, you could tell their body language was like, hey, we're done here. That was the crazy thing about that. Is that halftime of that game against Kansas, I remember watching Kansas walk off the court, and I was like, you know what? This was like one of those games. It may already be over. And I said it may already because you obviously have to wait until you see what happens in the second half. If they come out, the locker room hellfire and damnation speech that would have been rained upon them by Bill Self. Let's see how they respond to it. Well, they came out and BYU just laid more on them and they rolled over and died. And that was a mark of a good program-wide win for BYU. I'm talking Kevin Young. I'm talking his assistant coaches, Will Voigt on down. They all did their part to help BYU be ready to exploit the mismatches they had in the lineup. And then also at the same time, BYU's players, they deserve credit for playing their absolute rear ends off. They went out there and really took it to Kansas. They made Kansas quit. Nobody can say that Kansas wasn't feeling it. This is Big 12 play. Kansas has every expectation laid upon them. National championships, Final Four runs, everything that Bill Self has come to embody at Kansas, that is heaped upon the shoulders of the Kansas Jayhawks. And the pressure, it feels like it's beginning to get to them. They're cracking under it. BYU, conversely, they had very little pressure on them. And all they've done is go out there and thrive in this circumstance. If they can go to Arizona and win those games, man, how high could BYU go when it comes to bracketology and obviously March Madness? It feels like the sky is the limit for BYU. And that's an exciting proposition because it feels like just a week and a half ago, things were teetering on the edge of things falling apart for BYU, much like Kansas appears to be falling apart. The nice part is they rallied, they pulled together. They didn't fracture, they didn't break up. They really coalesced around one another, and that's a credit to Kevin Young for keeping guys on the same page, but it's also a credit to BYU players for buying in, understanding, hey, this is all we've got. We are who we have right here. Let's go out and make the best of our circumstance, and BYU's benefited from it. And this Arizona road trip, it could be pivotal to BYU's chances of really making noise in March Madness. I have said that the goal for me all season long for BYU was to get into the big dance and see what happens beyond that. Well, it all kind of depends on seeding in terms of the beyond that part of it. If they can get a high enough seed, a favorable matchup, yeah, then maybe make the round of 32 or make a Sweet 16, but that's still days and weeks ahead of us. The focus now has got to be on Arizona and the McKell Center Saturday night, and we'll see how they do in that circumstance. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Wednesday edition of the show. Feels like it's for a Monday for me because it's technically that, but nonetheless, thank you as always for your guys' support of the podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. And once again, as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. And more importantly, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.